Secretary of State, photo ID had languished. I was told there was no way we were ever going to get it done. You know, we got it done. And today, photo ID stands in Georgia as a model for elections integrity.
In just a few days, voting comes to a close in the special election in Georgia's 6th congressional district, a race that has cost a whopping $40 million and counting, making it the most expensive single House race ever. The Republican candidate, Karen Handel, has bragged about her efforts to make it harder to vote when she was Georgia's Secretary of State 7 years ago and instituted a major purge of the voter rolls. My next guest went down to Georgia and confronted Handel about her role in suppressing the vote.
You were Secretary of State. You used the system cross-check, which eliminated a lot of voters. Is the GOP trying to steal it?
We use a system of cross-check to make sure that illegal voters are not on our rolls.
Did you find any?
Yes, in fact, we did.
Did you arrest anyone?
As a matter of fact, several people were brought before the State Elections Board.
Fact check. Georgia did not convict a single double voter.
Joining me now is Greg Palast, the investigative journalist and filmmaker behind the book and the movie The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Greg, always great to talk to you. I want to play one more clip from your piece about Karen Handel's role in potential voter suppression. But actually, before I do that, I'm sorry, guys, let's go to cut three. Think Progress did an article about Karen Handel back when she was Secretary of State. And it said 7 years ago, Handel was Georgia Secretary of State, its chief elections officer. In that role, she was a top advocate for a then innovative method of voter suppression. She spearheaded an illegal purge of Georgia's voting rolls, and she even tried to prevent Democratic candidates from appearing on the state's ballots. Describe what she did.
Okay, what she did is she instituted the voter ID law. Now, we know in Wisconsin from studies that we lost 300,000 voters, mostly young people, poor people, voters of color. Guess how they vote? In Georgia, it was even worse. And under her and her successor, Brian Kemp, who is running as the Republican candidate for governor, they began raiding and impeding the voter registration groups. Like, for example, there's a group in the 6th congressional district in Georgia, which was called 10,000 Koreans Vote. Now, the Korean American community is a solid Democratic community based in Little Korea in the 6th. They try to register thousands of voters. The voters' names never appeared on the voter rolls. And when the group complained, the group's lawyers complained, they raided their offices. The state police and Georgia Bureau of Investigation, like G-Men, came in, grabbed their files, grabbed their computers, threatened them with criminal charges, which never occurred, which were dropped, never happened. But in the meantime, they shut down the voter registration drive. And those Korean Americans who would have made the difference even in the first round in Georgia 6th, their names were missing, never got on, and they've continued that pattern. Karen Handel has continued, and when she was Secretary of State, she was pushing, and it later was adopted, this system called cross-check, where they remove thousands of people in Georgia's 6th congressional district. So she's cleansing the voter rolls of voters of color, voters she doesn't like, and then she runs in the district where she's bleached the voter rolls.
And let's talk about cross-check a minute, because you did ask her about that in that clip that we showed when you confronted her about it. This is an article that you wrote in Rolling Stone explaining how cross-check works, and you wrote the following. A whole lot of people named James Brown are suspected of voting or registering twice, 357 of them in Georgia alone. But according to cross-check, James Willie Brown is supposed to be the same voter as James Arthur Brown. James Clifford Brown is allegedly the same voter as James Lynn Brown. This inherent bias resulted in an astonishing 1 in 6 Hispanics, 1 in 7 Asian Americans, and 1 in 9 African Americans in cross-check states landing on the list. How many states are using this, and is Georgia still using this to purge its voter rolls?
Oh, yeah, and Karen Handel's proud that they were removing people based on the fact that this is Donald Trump's claim, by the way, that 3 million people voted twice illegally because they found a James Brown in Georgia and they found a James Brown in Detroit. Different middle names, different ages, that didn't matter. They were removing them from the voter rolls. And I went for this Rolling Stone investigation, by the way, right into Georgia's 6th congressional district, where they were removing, the Koreans, for example, have names like David Kim, a very, very common name. They're removing a lot of Asian Americans from the voter rolls in the Georgia 6th. That example of James Brown actually comes from the Georgia 6th. They removed people named James Brown, and she's proud of it. It's a crime It's a crime. You go to jail for voting twice. So they didn't arrest anyone. That's why I asked her about the arrest. They didn't arrest anyone. They didn't convict anyone. They just took away their voting rights by the thousands.
I want to talk about one other thing that she did when she was Secretary of State. I'm sorry, I'm racing through it just a little bit to try to get as much in as possible. You also talk about the fact that when Karen Handel was Secretary of State, she ignored warnings about the integrity of the electronic voting system. And here's the quote, and this is from a 2008 report. The Election Center at Kennesaw State University fills a key role in Georgia's statewide election procedures, which makes it a potential target of a systemic attack. In 2017, the threat became real. There was a data breach at Kennesaw State. While the Georgia Secretary of State's office said that key equipment was not touched, a lawsuit was filed in which worried parties demanded paper ballots in the June 20 special election for the 6th district. The plaintiffs lost, but concerns about the state's 15-year election system have bubbled up. So they don't have paper ballots, and you're saying that they probably should.
Well, not only should they have paper ballots, after all, it's only one race. Why do you need electronic machines to count little pieces of paper that you could easily do, as they just did in England? There's absolutely no reason to use these vulnerable electronic machines. And I should tell you, this is not just about Georgia. In Ohio, just before the presidential election, I uncovered that the Ohio state officials in many counties GOP officials had turned off the anti-hacking software on their voting machines. I was in a courtroom when they admitted this to a judge. So what's happening is, think about this. We're talking about machines which are vulnerable, and they turn off the anti-hacking software. They know these things are vulnerable. Wow. It's much more expensive to use the electronic machines than a simple piece of paper for this Tuesday runoff. Yeah.
Let me play one more clip from the package that you did and this is on a voter registration group with disappearing ballots. This is crazy. Take a look.
Voting rights groups registered literally tens of thousands of minority voters, but strangely, the voter forms simply vanished.
We registered 86,419 voter registration forms.
How many again?
86,419. There are 46,000 of the folks that we've registered who have made it, and 40,000 of them are missing. And you know what they told us? We don't know what you're talking about. What forms?
And just for context for our viewers, this is the breakdown demographically of the 6th congressional district. 60% of the people are college graduates, 70% are white, 13% are African American. It's a median age of 38. Who is being targeted, and have you been able to tell whose ballots are disappearing?
Absolutely. Well, that was Nsé Ufot of the New Georgia Project. That's an African-American registration group. So almost all the people that they registered were low-income and African-Americans and students. Then you had the other group, which was 10,000 Korean votes, and the Asian American Legal Advocacy Committee, and they were put out of business by the state with threats of criminal action, including the woman you saw. She's facing criminal charges by the state. Why? Because when she said, where are our voters, our 40,000 missing voters? 40,000. They said, we don't know where they are. We never received those forms. She said, well, we have photocopies of the forms. And then they said, oh, well, then we're going to come and arrest you for photocopying voter registration forms. That's not a crime. They're going to drop the charges as they did with the Asian American groups. They're just trying to intimidate the registration drives for voters of color.
Wow. Do not assume that just because you registered to vote that your job is done. This is some scary stuff, and it's happening, and it ain't the Russians. Check your voter registration. Vote early, in early vote, so that you can make sure that you're on the rolls. This is serious stuff. Greg Palast, best in the business at tracking this stuff down. Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome, Joy.
Thank you. And coming up in our next hour, tone versus action in Washington. And Malcolm Nance becomes a Jedi. More AM Joy after the break.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.